Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch, previously known as the Small Church Podcast. I'm Tony Marr, and with me is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everyone, we're glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and talk about real life stuff of ministry, faith, community, and maybe a little sports and pop culture.
Yeah, if you're expecting a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
We're more about those honest heart-to-heart conversations, like the ones you'd have on the front porch with friends. Sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes we take the scenic route.
That's half the fun, isn't it? Here we tackle the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of church and of life. Every now and then, we'll welcome a few friends to the front porch and share stories and ideas that might just change the way that you see things.
So whether you're a pastor, a church leader, or just someone who loves the church, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. We've got a seat waiting for you.
I had a tragic accident this morning.
I've been here a while, so you had that accident really early.
I did, and I think that there's going to be PTSD involved. So my morning was just rushed, really rushed. I was halfway through my workout this morning when I remembered that we had contractors showing up to work on a garage door, and the garage needed to be cleaned out. So I quick wrapped up the lifting part of my workout, ran downstairs, cleaned out the garage, came back, and thought I have time to get in my cardio. So I jump on the treadmill and start doing my cardio. And then I'm looking and I'm thinking of all the things that have to happen to get ready for the show today. And I still need to shower when I'm done with this. You're going to be showing up any minute. So I quick jump off the treadmill. I hop into the shower, take a quick power shower, and then I get out, and I don't take time to adequately dry because my heart rate is racing. I've got to get things done. We've got a guest coming into the studio today, and there's a lot to be done.
We might be leaving very shortly after this.
Have you ever tried to put a dry sock onto a wet foot in a confined closet space? It doesn't happen very well. And why I chose to put my socks on before anything else. So I'm in my closet completely naked, trying to put my socks on, and I fall. I lose my balance. Now, if you are young and semi-athletic and coordinated and have a little bit of balance, then balancing on one foot while trying to put a dry sock onto a wet foot is a pretty seemingly easy task. But if you have no bit of athleticism, as I do, if you're above middle age, as you and I discussed before we started recording today, and you're soaking wet with zero balance at all at this stage of life, it is a very difficult task to do. The dry sock does not want to slide adequately onto the damp foot. And so I fell in my closet, hurt myself really badly, Robert, and I'm laying naked in the floor of my closet. I'm not completely naked because I do have a sock, half on one foot. And I'm thinking, if I die in this moment, this is going to be a very sad memory for whoever finds me in my closet, naked, still seemingly wet with half a sock on my foot.
Well, time plus tragedy is how you and Matt both make money. So, I mean, that could really work out down the road.
But that's how my day started. So I'm a solid 4 out of 10 right now today.
I tell you what, I'm going to refrain, and I'm going to let the comedian step in. And
we do have a guest in studio with us this morning here on the Pulpit and Porch.
First of all, let me
on the
just
porch.
say that I had plenty of time this morning because I don't exercise or shower.
All right. And we do want to welcome onto the porch an old friend of yours, someone who I met for the first time this morning, Matt Fore, humorist, comedian, magician, speaker. Matt, welcome to the Pulpit and Porch.
Where am I?
Yeah. We're still trying to figure that out.
Sorry, I thought I was just coming in for therapy. I didn't realize this was a podcast. No, I'm great. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Matt, we came across each other in a pretty strange way.
Yes, we did. What a story that is.
Yeah. So a long, long time ago, I lived in a house. I still live in a house. I still live in a house, and I've lived in homes for most of my life. But a long time ago, I lived in a certain house that moved out of almost 20 years ago now. And then I guess you moved into this house at some point in time.
Okay.
And one day you went to the mailbox
Right.
and
Right.
got some of my mail.
So you lived in that house that I live in?
I did.
No kidding. How did I miss that part? I go to the mailbox and, I see a bunch of junk. I always get junk and I just throw the junk away, like the advertisements, my bills, things like that. And throw them all away. But I saw your letter, something that came to you, and I started to throw it away. And then there was something about it. I said, I just really believe the Lord wants me to contact this guy. So I just wrote you a letter and sent it in the mail, and we made a connection that way. Isn't that amazing?
It's so cool.
That is so cool.
And now you're sitting in my living room having a conversation on our show.
Yeah.
But you had a history with Robert. You've
did.
done some work. You've known Robert for a while.
Yeah, we've got a mutual friend, Josh Mancuso,
Right.
that you guys were doing some funny short videos together.
Yeah, we call them funny short films.
Yeah.
Yeah, boys, those are so much fun. And you helped us with one called Cupcakes. Did you ever see it?
I did. I did see that. It was really funny.
Yeah,
it was really, really funny. And I got to be the DP on that shoot. And Landon, my oldest son, came in and helped as well. Mm-hmm. And Josh Mancuso and I have known each other for, a good while now. And it introduced me to Matt for the first time. And so, it was a really, really, really good time.
Yeah. The premise of that funny short film is, how when you go online to buy something and you would think that they would make it easy for you and just take your money and send you the product, but they don't. You have to have a password. You can't get in. All these terrible things happen when you just try to buy something online. And I thought, what would it be like if retail stores treated you that way? So the guy comes in just to buy some cupcakes. That's all he wants, some cupcakes. And the guy behind the counter is like, you have a password? And he's having the worst time buying cupcakes. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So we filmed that. It's about a 4-minute video. It's funny and it's short and it's a film. So we thought about that and came up with a good title for these things. And we call them funny short films.
That's creative.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that it's taken as long for, Matt to reach the level of a lower level mediocre podcast, but that type of creative.
I know.
Yeah. I'm excited.
So but that was a blast, and we were just talking off air right before. Matt does a lot of magic and comedy, and we're going to get into all of those conversations. But those types of things also influenced, my kid, who was in a space and doing some magic tricks and starting to learn that craft. And it really is a craft. I remember sitting at a restaurant with a magician. Good gracious, it's been probably 20 years ago now. And I worked with this guy who did magic tricks, and he was always like, how cool are my magic tricks? And I'm going, whatever. And so I'm sitting at a restaurant with this guy. I was like, what magic trick could you show me in 30 seconds that I could go back and just kind of be like, I can do a magic trick too. And he would not show me one. Because he was like, that's just not how this works. And because it's an incredible art. And having watched my son, who when he was 16 bought like volumes of books like these, how to like learn, not just learning magic, but the art of magic. And it was a ton of fun watching him go through that. But Matt invested in them. You were.
Actually, I was a magician's assistant. Well, actually, I was a magician's prop.
Oh.
You ever heard of Melinda, the First Lady of Magic?
Absolutely, in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and her husband is Lance Burton, or was Lance Burton.
Yeah.
So Melinda's brother was my basketball coach when I was in high school. And for our end of year party celebration, he got us all front row tickets to go see his sister's show. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, grew up in Las Vegas. And so we all went to see Melinda, the First Lady of Magic. And she took us backstage before the show, showed us around, talked to us a little bit. And then we had seats on the front row. And there came a part in the show when she needed a volunteer from the audience. Yeah. And she introduced her brother's basketball team and said, I need a volunteer. And everyone pointed at me. And so I went up on stage, and she had a big guillotine on stage. And she had a watermelon where the head goes, and then 2 heads of lettuce where your arms go. And she pulls a rope, the things come down, the watermelon gets cut in half, the lettuce is split in 2. Then she pulls the things back up, opens it, and puts me in. And so my head is in this guillotine, my arms are in this guillotine. And she closes the thing up. Everyone's snapping pictures. Everyone's laughing. I'm smiling. I'm laughing, thinking this is great. This is going to be magic. And she comes up and whispers in my ear, "Don't tense up." And so, of course, you tense up as soon as she says that. It's human nature. And then she does the countdown. She pulls the rope. I hear the thing coming down. I can hear it coming. And then it hits my neck and my wrists. And it hurt. It hurt. And it just felt like I had ice around my neck and around my wrists. Everyone's doing it on. I'm looking around and smiling and laughing, and people are taking pictures, and she pulls it back up. I wipe off some watermelon juice off of my neck, and it was residual from the demonstration. And then she escorts me back down. And we went backstage after the show, got to meet her tiger that was back there. I asked her how she did it. She wouldn't tell me. She wouldn't tell me how she did it, but she thanked me. I got a T-shirt, Melinda T-shirt. And the next morning I woke up and felt like I had whiplash. Yeah. My neck hurt so bad. Can you explain to me what happened there? How did she do that trick?
Yes,
because it's now 30
it.
years later and I've never known.
She scared you to death.
She did.
That's how she did it. But that's one of those tricks that doesn't always work. So you go through a lot of assistance.
Yeah.
There's a double pun there. I don't know if you guys got that or not.
But, no. That's so good.
Yeah. It was one of the things about magic is people are always asking you, how did you do it? How'd you do it? But they don't want to know. I mean, if you tell people how you did it,
it ruins the magic.
It does. It ruins the magic. And it's funny because in magic, the objective is that you take things that are very, very hard and you make them look simple.
Yes.
But you also take very simple things and make them look hard.
That's so true.
So that's another deception. It's a deception on top of a deception, but it's all in fun. You know, I tell people at the end of my show, as I'm getting ready to move into the little message, I'll say, I just think I need to tell you people that everything I've said up here for the last hour has been a big fat lie.
So you spent 25 years as a magician, humorist, comedian. How did you get started in this?
Oh, that's a good story. How much time do you have?
We were talking about eating dinner together.
Okay. If you really want to know, I can tell you. So I'm 12 years. It was a cold
day in December.
Yeah. I need to go to urgent care at some point today.
Yeah. I remember laying there with a bunch of other babies. So I'm 12 years old. We're in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, walking down the sidewalk. And there is a store that says Magic, Tricks, and Fun. It was Ripley's Believe It or Not Magic Shop. Mm. I did not walk in there. I was sucked in there. It just absolutely drew me in. We were on vacation for 3 days. I stayed in the magic shop for 3 days. My parents came to get me for lunch and dinner and time to go back to the hotel. And I watched the same tricks over and over. And I never got tired of it. I was trying to figure it out. I was so fascinated by it. We did the same thing for 2 years after that. I did the same thing. When I was 15 years old, I met a guy. I could walk to his shop from the church where my dad was a minister. And this guy had studied under one of the best sleight of hand magicians in the world, a guy named Jack Channon, who taught his student, Tim Bryson. Tim Bryson taught me. And I would go to Tim's house and I would stay there and never stop asking questions. And he kept telling me things. And then he would say, all right, get out of here before I break your neck. And I would say, okay, see you tomorrow. And my youth was spent in my room, locked away, practicing and talking to my mentor, learning to perform. And I actually missed the whole drug and alcohol thing because I was busy practicing magic, which, by the way, I'm making up for that now.
Yeah.
But not really. But yeah, and then I just started doing shows. And I remember the first show I did, my mentor, Tim, was there. I was so nervous, I couldn't tie two silks together. And he came up and helped me. And little by little, I just started doing shows. So I'm now a teenager. I'm working at a grocery store called Community Trash. It's actually called Community Cash, but we had nicknames for everything. And I would get a job. Now think about it. I worked all afternoon Thursday, all afternoon Friday, and all day Saturday. This was back in the late 1800s, where my pay for those 3 days' work was $35. And I could go and line up a show for the Rotary Club and make $50. $35 for 3 days' work, $50 for 30 minutes. Well, I got my calculator out and, started adding things up and minusing things. You tote the one, by the way, and realized, you know what? There might be something to this. So skip. I did shows at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Would go down there in May, stay all summer, lived in a little tiny little camper trailer. It was so tiny. I mean, you could sit on the bed, wash dishes, and brush your teeth and open the front door without getting up. That's how tiny that place was. That said, somebody had to go outside to change your mind. And put a key in the front door and broke a window. It was little. It was a little bitty thing. But I just went down there. I had no shows, no income, no nothing. And I just went down and just started banging on doors. I got a show at the campground where I worked. If I would do one show on Saturday night, they would let me have a camp spot for free. Okay, now I got a place to live. I went and knocked on doors. I got a little show at a resort, like a show every Friday at 11 o'clock. They paid me a few bucks, a campground here, a resort there. And next thing you know, I'm living at the beach for free and doing shows. So this is starting to work, And so that's kind of the way I got into it. Little by little, I would book myself at shows. And I worked for a long time, worked my way through college, worked in a jewelry store for 10 years. But little by little, I was able to jump from one ship to the other, right? I didn't want to just quit, but I kind of had to, to make that leap. But you start looking at it like, can I actually make a living doing this?
Yeah.
We probably
don't have a lot of kids listening to our show. I don't know that that's our market or demographic.
Our kids don't even listen to our show.
Do not listen at all. I don't know what they might listen to the baseball episode that will eventually drop.
Mine won't.
Brody, mine might, just because they would want to be able to argue with me about
my
that.
kids were on the show and they didn't even listen to that episode.
So I don't think, but we do have younger pastors and things like that who I believe have some dreams, and and you and I, not 22 anymore. And like you said, when working was happening back in the day, you could work all weekend. You're making, $5 an hour or something like that. And you make a few bucks. Talk about that though. What kind of was working and the importance of just going, hey, I was passionate about something and I sacrificed some things to really dive in and kind of learn this craft and learn this. And because you made the joke about, the whole, the whole drugs and alcohol thing. And like, they tell me all the time, they're like, hey, if you want to keep your kids, especially my oldest, and if you keep him away from all that stuff, just let him keep buying guitars. He won't be able to afford it. And that's kind of the truth. He buys guitars all the time and he can't afford anything that would be a problem other than the fact he can't afford anything because he keeps buying guitars. But he works that craft and he works those things. What about that? It just kind of maybe that, because we have a lot of pastors and church leaders and things that have these dreams and aspirations of things they want to do and want to start, but that working that craft, kind of talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
When I was working in the jewelry store, I had a spiral binder that was my workbook for the shows. This was before I really got into it full time. And I remember on the spiral binder, I wrote work consistently, but not frantically. Because I didn't want to have that frantic, I got to get this done. But the key element there was that I wanted it so bad. I wanted to be a full-time magician. That's what I wanted to do. Now, that may be an odd thing to want, but I wanted that more than anything. I dreamed about it. I thought about it when I was working at the retail store, working my way through college. But that is what I wanted to do. And if it had not been for that, I would have never made it. Because there are a million reasons why you can't do something. and you will have a chorus of people that will agree with you. Like, well, you know, I wanted to do this, but I got married. We had these kids and we had this money problem, or I got sick or whatever. And everybody will agree with you. Yeah, that's right. You couldn't do it. It's too bad that happened. But you have to want it so bad that, and I wrote an article about this. It's called Ignore the Cynics. Hope is your greatest asset. And I talk about in there, I said, there is one dream that will come true, and that is the dream that you refuse to fail. You absolutely refuse to not let this happen, and you just desire it so much. So I would work consistently by calling. I remember my first show after I graduated from college. I knew it's what I wanted to do, and I called my aunt in Durham. She was my uncle Crate was the pastor, and she answered the phone. I said, "Hi, Heracles." I said, "Guess what?" She said, "What?" I said, "I'm coming to do a show for you." And she said, "You are?" And I said, "Yeah." And I didn't have a show, but they're like, "Well, okay, come on." And we just did it as a love offering, and it went great. What I tell you, you get a little taste of success, and it just drives you forward. So I think that's really a big part of it. Is like, if you kind of want it, you kind of want this, you kind of want that, you're not going to make it like that. You got to know what you want. And I really believe that God gives us a passion for something and sort of a natural bent toward something, but we have to develop that.
You grew up in the church. Your dad was a Baptist minister. At what point did you decide that you wanted your shows to be more than just a magic show, but to carry some sort of meaning to them? We've all been to magic shows that are wonderful. I've been to David Copperfield, David Blaine, Lance Burton, Melinda, but they don't have any message to them. At what point did that change for you?
I don't think there was like a moment when it happened. It's just that it's just such a natural part of it. I didn't have to like change my idea or change my style. It's just that you have this relationship with God, and you just want that to come out, right? I don't do gospel magic. You've seen people do this where they use the magic as an object lesson. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's not my style. I do the show for a church or Christian conference the same as I would do for a corporate conference, which I do a lot of those. And then I segue over into the message by telling a little story, which is going to parallel the message. Otherwise, you're going to give people whiplash. It's like we're all laughing, and all of a sudden you stop and go, "Everyone turn in your Bibles," and move into preacher voice. So I don't do that. But let me tell you a story. I was 16 years old. I was getting ready to go to my first magic convention in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Magic conventions are held all over the world. It's where a bunch of magicians get together, and we do shows, and we have lectures, and there are dealer rooms, and there are all contests and all these kind of things. I was 16 years old, had never been to a magic convention before, was so excited, and I wanted to enter the contest at the magic convention, which, if you think about it, is really kind of dumb, because I've never even been to one. I'm 16. What do I know? My mother brought an envelope into my room, and there was a book in an envelope, and she wrote on the envelope, "Do not open this envelope until you have read this book." It was a book called Prison to Praise by Merlin Carruthers. She wanted me to read it bad enough to pay me, and I held the envelope up to the light, and it was $10. Now, at the time, that's like 3 weeks pay.
Technically didn't open it.
I didn't open it. I don't think that was, I wasn't cheating, really. But I read Prison to Praise, and there was a story in there about a man who thanked God for something in advance, right? And that's just a principle. In all things, give thanks, for this is the will of God. And so you could preach on that. But the point is, I got this idea that when you thank God for something in advance, that's faith, and God honors that. So I go to this convention. I entered the contest. It was a 2.5 hour competition. I was the first person that performed. Now, there was a meeting prior to the contest where all these performers got together, and I heard things like, "Where do I back up my truck for my equipment?" All of I'm like, "Who's got equipment? What are you talking about?" I had a milk cart, a plastic milk cart, and 2 tubes that a friend of mine had made. My stuff was homemade. I entered the contest. There is no way I can compete with these guys that are performing professional level shows. One guy floated a ball in the air with no foulard. One guy did a magic trick with a ball. He bounced it on the ground. It bounced up. He caught it, cracked it in a glass, and it was an egg. I mean, it was amazing stuff. I was the first performer. At the end of the contest, because I didn't know better, was in the audience when they called the curtain call, and all the performers came out and took a bow, and I missed the curtain call. I'm like, the judges are going to forget me, So I go backstage right as they're announcing the winner, and I stood at the corner of the stage because I expected them to call my name out, because after all, I thanked God in advance, right? And I want you to know, I won first place in that competition, and it's not because I was the best magician. In fact, I cheated because I prayed. That's how I cheated. I trusted God, and God gave me first place in that thing. And it meant something. It was so special to me that God had spoken to me, that God had talked to me. They put me on the show that night. I was on the show with the professional magicians. I tried to call my mom and tell her I won, and I couldn't get through to her. And I finally got through to her that night, and as I was telling her the news, a whole bunch of people were coming in the house. So she got to announce it to an audience. God's timing he gives you more than he gives you more than you expect.
Yeah.
But that was God right there. That was God as a 16-year-old kid communicating with me. So, when you have an experience like that, and then you're going to churches, for me, it's not like I've got to write a sermon and get through this. I get to share with them the relationship that I have with God. I get to say, guess what happened? Guess what God did for me? And people are hungry for that. So they're not long sermons. I do preach long sermons, but when I do the show, it's about 50 minutes of just rip-roaring, hilarious comedy magic. Then I'll segue over and just share the message. If it's evangelistic, it's a clear presentation of the gospel. If it's a bunch of pastors, then we're going to talk about, the way God encourages you, and, just so many things you can talk.
That's great. I want to go down that path with you in just a minute, but first we've got to have a word from our show sponsor.
Empowering leaders, enriching lives. That's the heart of Hire Ministries. They're dedicated to equipping Christian leaders with the tools and resources they need to thrive in their calling. Whether you're looking for leadership development, strategic planning, or community outreach strategies, Hire Ministries is here to help. Visit hireministries.com to learn more and thank them for supporting our show.
Good job with that read.
I'm not the one who fell in my closet naked this morning.
We're both having bad days. Matt, so I'm going to ask you for brutal honesty on this. This is a safe place. In fact, we'll disguise your name from here on out. Pat Moore is who our guest is on the show until it's time to promote your work and how people can get in contact with you.
Fat Moore.
Fat Moore.
Well, when you say brutal,
you look at him,
you look at him. That is that's not it at all. Yeah.
So you, in your career, you have worked with so many different people. You have performed in so many different venues, from campgrounds in Myrtle Beach to Carnival Cruise Lines.
Right.
You've done major corporate events,
right,
and you've done church events.
Yes.
Large, small, it doesn't matter. You've done it all. What is unique and different about performing for church audiences, Christian audiences, as opposed to doing a Carnival Cruise Line or a campground in Myrtle Beach?
Okay, well, the thing about churches and Christian conferences that I love so much is that we're all brothers and sisters, and the tension in the air is so much less. It's so comfortable to be performing at a church or a conference. When you do corporate things, it's just, it's tense, it's uptight. and they're uptight, and everybody's it's so I've got to get up on that stage after, they've eaten and the president has gotten up and read the annual report and bored people to death, and I've got to get up and break the ice with those people. That's one of the hardest things about this, is that you got to get out there and make them love you. Love me, by George. So that's one of the differences, is that the corporate shows are much more intense and full of pressure. And those Christian conferences, I would love to just do Christian conferences in churches. I feel so right at home.
Sadly, they probably pay the worst.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Corporate pays twice, or more what churches do, but that's okay. I want to give churches a break because I love to do them. Yeah.
I'm sure you've had the opportunity in preparing and backstage in the green room, talking before and after these shows, to spend a lot of time with pastors. What are some of the common themes that you've heard from pastors and Christian leaders over the years that you've had the opportunities to work with?
Well, one of the main things when I do evangelistic things is that pastors have such a genuine heart for people getting born again. And you take me back, stage, and we'll just pray. And you can tell that it just comes from their heart, that they just love people and they want people to be born again. And that's a wonderful thing. But if I'm going to speak to people that are Christians already, the passion that I have for people and the message that I want to get out is the message of the kingdom of God. That's a theme. It's a very broad theme, but that's what I want. I want people to go from, okay, I'm born again, now I'm just waiting to go to heaven, to understand that the kingdom involves everything in your life. It involves your health, your prosperity, your purpose in life, your marriage, just all of these things. There's so many things that I could speak to. My dad said that the kingdom of God is like you walk into a big house and you step into the mudroom. You know what a mudroom is? A mudroom.
Yes.
You go to the mudroom. That's a little section at the beginning of the house.
That's the room that keeps mama from beating you the rest of the day.
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
After you've had a good time outside, you get to get the shoes off before you make mama mad.
If your shoes aren't in the mudroom, you're about to be in the mudroom yourself. But he said it's like you go into this house and you're in the mudroom, but then they hand you a set of keys. You can imagine the big round ring with all the keys on it. And each one of those keys opens a door inside of that house. It's a huge house. So one door might be having to deal with your purpose and your calling in life. One might be with your prosperity. One might be with your health. One might be as a father or a mother. And what people tend to do is that they get, like, getting born again gets you in the house. But a lot of people stay right there. They just live in the mudroom their whole life. And so what I like to do is to go out and talk about all these rooms and what God has to say about your career, for example. What he has to say about being a great dad. But if I'm doing a marriage conference, it's about marriage, Valentine banquets, obviously. You know what I mean? There's just no end. There's no end to it. And as I do different conferences, there are different themes, because usually a conference has a theme. What sure. This is about. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, like, this is going to be a touch of a shift. I love what you're saying there. Like, Tony and I were talking about some of that, maybe in some different, kind of a different approach, but this whole idea of casual Christianity and things. And I love what you're saying there. People just kind of walk in, they're going, oh, I've got my fire escape theology. I don't have to go to hell. I get to go to heaven, but then I don't really have to do a whole lot else. And it's such a broken view of what the scriptures teach and how it goes. And so this is definitely moving away from that. You talk about doing like conferences, and of course churches are, unfortunately dying pretty rapidly as well, but churches are still, there's a lot of them around. How has it affected you with conferences seemingly going more online? It's a lot harder to, of course, like Tony, like Higher Ministries would, our sponsor used to do conferences, and tons of leaders would show up to these events and be a part and come and join in. And just what is that talk with Higher Ministries and the staff and the team that's there, like they just found that as conferences started going more online, like in-person attendance just felt like it wasn't necessary. How's that affected your world, and how are you kind of adapting inside of that?
Well, when we had the virus, y'all remember the virus?
Vaguely.
Remember that? It came out. It was in 2020, I believe.
You might need to go to urgent care.
It was a struggle for me because I am not a techie person. It's kind of like, I don't know. I got a smooth spot on my brain for that. My cell phone has a rotary dial, which, if it gives you any idea of how
I thought that was weird when you carried it in. I wasn't sure what that was.
Right,
so,
right, on a cart, and it's got a long cable.
There's a dolly rolling it in here. Yeah.
Plugs it to the cigarette lighter in the car. So when that happened, I mean, everything stopped for us entertainers and speakers. It's not like business slowed down. It's like it stopped. And I wasn't expecting that at all.
Well, all three of us are in that world. Tony was mainly a storyteller, traveling and speaking in storytelling. I was doing photography, creative video stuff. And we all went to bed one night with bookings for weeks, months, maybe a year out, and woke up the next day with emails and text message of, sorry, everything's canceled.
Everything canceled. And it was March the 9th that I had to show up in Ohio. And March the 10th, my life changed.
Yeah.
I came home and I got a call from it was a senior fast where they have like 300 or 400 older people that did a big 3-day festival event every year. And they called and said, we have to cancel. And I said, why? She said, well, the virus. I said, you're kidding. You're going to cancel it because of that?
Just the flu.
And so everything not only did everything cancel, but nothing was coming in.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to use Zoom. And I set up, sounds crazy, I contacted every International Brotherhood of Magicians ring. They call them rings. They're clubs that go all over the country, all over the world. I contacted every one of them in the country and set up lectures for magicians and had to learn how to do Zoom sessions for these people. And I would have a session that night and I'd be on the phone with a friend of mine who is techie, trying to figure out where the volume button is. I mean, think about it. I'm booked tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how to work it today. So it was really tough. So I started doing those things and have done many virtual conferences. I did two-day conferences. I just did a lecture interview thing this Monday night. So Zoom has become a big part of what I do, and it has slowed things down. But I think that people have done so much online that they really miss the contact. They really miss being with people. And I think it's all going to come back because you can't replace real life people being together and shaking hands.
Yeah. So you're seeing a shift actually of conferences that kind of gone away. People were moving more digital, even a little bit pre-COVID. But now, even in this world of 5 years later, you're starting to see a shift of a few more events starting to come back into person, in-person events, not streaming, not just sharing.
Yeah, because you'd hear people just talk about, I'm so tired of being online. People just want to get together. And like when I'm doing an online event, and I do quite a few of them, I tell them, I say, folks, this is not like being in front of a live audience. I get a lot of energy and excitement from you guys. So I say, if I say anything that you think is funny, please raise your hand. Give me the applause, give me the thumbs up, the heart. And I'll tell them, I say, I know that sounds weird to you that I would need that, but my doctor says it's perfectly normal. And he just wants me to stay on the medication, which I was doing anyway. In fact, by the way, Tony, I've doubled it now and I feel great.
All right. That's good to hear. Good to know. Public service announcement. Matt, what are some of the most memorable, life-changing moments that you've had in your career?
Oh, wow. You should have asked me that yesterday. I could tell you so many of them. Good gracious. Some of them were absolute, utter disasters. Those are fun. And also just meeting some fantastic people, over time. Like, you can't believe you're in the presence of these people. I was at the Magic Castle. I performed there 3 times, which is the hub of magicians from around the world. And it's very, very hard to get in there. But somehow, that's another miracle, I got in. So I'm over there.
Is its location secret?
It's in Hollywood, California.
No, it's
Franklin Avenue. Do what?
I said, no, it's not.
Not secret.
It was supposed to be.
It's not a secret. It is a celebrity hub in Hollywood. Very hard to get in there. But I did get in there, and I was walking from my hotel, which is just a parking lot across, over to the Magic Castle. And so I'm down at the entrance of the driveway, and this big yellow car pulls in, and the guy rolls the window down. And his question is, can I get in? I'm not a member. He rolled the window down, and it was Kramer from Seinfeld. And I went, if you're in entertainment and you meet another entertainer, you want to say something that's rather dignified. Like you just want to say something like, and this would work. Hey, man, I like your work. I love your work. Love what you're doing. You want to say something like that so that you can be a peer to them. But I was in such shock that I was looking at a celebrity. This is what I said. And please don't broadcast this. But this is what I said. I know you. That was what I said. And he just smiled at me, sort of nodded like, okay, you're not one of us. And he had this beautiful girl that was in the car with him who probably wouldn't have been in the car with him had he not been Michael Richards, from Seinfeld. So he pulls up to the entrance. I go in to say, "God, you're not going to believe this. Michael Richards is here. He wants to be my guest." I could have up to 8 guests. And so this is hard to believe. They wouldn't let him in because he was wearing blue jeans. And I just couldn't think fast enough. I should have given him my pants. I should have said, wait here. Let me run to the hotel. I will get you some of my pants and you can go in. They would have been like high waters.
Yeah, he's pretty tall.
Right. But he gave me his card. And he said, you do good magic. I don't know what that means. Because he hadn't seen me do any magic. I wish you the best with your good magic. Or certainly hadn't seen anything. But he said, he gave me that card. And I have been waiting on him to call and have not heard anything from him.
But if he gave you the card, you'd have to call.
Yeah. See, Robert, I wasn't that smart back in those days. I wasn't able to put that together, So, yeah, I got a separate phone line for that. Yeah. I met a lot of great people.
When he said Magic Castle, I thought he was talking Disney World.
Yeah. There's the Magic Castle in Hollywood. And then there's sort of a brother to that, which is the Magic Circle in London. And those are the two big hubs.
Is that
magicians
Catch Me If You Can?
What do you mean?
Catch Me If You Can?
Movie? I love that. There's a third one coming out this summer.
Is there really?
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, Landon.
Isn't that the Magic Circle? They want to get into the Magic Circle in London.
I know what you're talking about. That was that movie that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It might have been. I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't remember that part of it, but yeah, I definitely. I don't remember if that's the exact place they were trying to get into, but yeah,
something along those lines. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret about the magic in that movie, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there was a lot of editing.
Oh,
there's a lot of editing.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that any of them went really. And Woody Harrelson was like, "I'm going to go learn actual slide." They're not Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise would have learned magic, and it would have been real.
Like when you throw a card behind your back, and it floats around, it lands just in somebody's pocket, stuff like that. That's unlikely. You're going to need editing for that sort of thing. Yeah. With magic on camera, everything is fair except editing. You can't. Of course, that's just a movie, But when people are doing magic on TV, everything is fair as far as like your tricks, your sleight, your gimmicks, all that's fair. But what's not fair is coming across as if you're, using skill when in fact really it's just the camera. You could see that on Bewitched. That's not that's not magic.
In our pre-show, you had said be sure to ask me to tell the story about a girl
Oh,
who
yeah.
at one of your shows. I will just let you pick up from there.
So I was doing a lot of shows across the country for Upward Basketball. You know what that is? Upward Basketball. For anybody that doesn't know, Upward Basketball was a program that ran for 20 years or so all over the country. And usually the largest church in town would set up a basketball league, and it would give them an excuse to go out to all the communities, bring the kids in. They don't have to go to First Baptist Church, just get all the kids from all the community in. They would play the basketball games. And then at the end of the season, which was 8 weeks, they would have a celebration night where all the kids came, all the parents, all the grandparents. Man, I tell you what. They would pack out gymnasiums of people, pack out big sanctuaries full of people. And so the cheerleaders did all kinds of stuff. They gave awards. And then I would get up and do the show. It's kind of a short show, maybe 40 minutes, and then do a gospel presentation. So this was a night where there were probably 500 people in the auditorium. And when the show was over, they had all left except the pastor and one lady. And I was going to walk up to the pastor and just say, hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. But as it got closer, I could tell he was in deep conversation with this lady, and she was crying. Well, I've learned not to go near a lady if she's crying. You know, my wife taught me that. And so I kind of backed up, and then she's like, no, come here. And I want to know what's going on. This lady had a neighbor, a little girl who was 9 years old. And the little girl called the lady the religious lady. And this lady was always trying to witness to this little girl because she came from a very bad home and she didn't know the Lord. And this, I don't know, the guy just put a soft place in this lady's heart for this little girl. And as I got up closer to her, this is what she said. The little girl was sitting beside her. I'm up there, doing the gospel presentation. And the little girl said to the lady, she said, did you hear that? And what? And she said, he's saying my name. He's saying my name. That little girl heard God saying her name. I didn't say her name. I didn't know what her name was. But that little girl, God spoke to that little girl in an audible way multiple times and said her name. It was just like I was on stage saying, Rebecca, God loves you. That's what she was hearing. That's not what I was saying, but that's what she was hearing. And she got born again that night. An absolute miracle. I'll never forget that.
Very cool. Very cool story. All right, we're going to take just a minute and hear from our sponsor again, then we'll dive into more with Matt. Is your ministry...
Prideful. That's all I can say.
Yeah. It happens to all of us. I'm just breaking these teeth in for a friend. And so that happens to me too.
Is your ministry ready to reach new heights? Hire Ministries is here to help you grow, lead, and serve with excellence. From leadership coaching to practical resources for church management, they offer everything you need to take your ministry to the next level. We're proud to have them as our sponsor. So visit hireministries.com today and see how they can help you make a greater impact in your church and in your community. So Matt, you've told some great stories of things that you've experienced over the course of your career, over the course of your interactions with different churches, with different people. Are there any unique approaches that you use in your ministry? And I want to call it a ministry because with the stories you've told, it is a ministry. You are reaching people. Yeah. It is a ministry. So are there any unique approaches that you've used, that you've seen, that have helped you to reach people in maybe a different way, that is something that would be applicable to the local congregation or other church, parachurch organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. For one thing, the funny short films that we do, but also I write articles for Christian Leadership Alliance, entrepreneur.com, success.com. And I think that the key with these things is it's going to sound like I'm just focusing on what I do, but it's entertainment. I mean, people love to be entertained.
Well, that's why we have you here.
Yeah,
because of what you do. So,
yeah,
and you do a great job,
and to
with
help
it.
balance out Robert.
Yes, I am dull.
But people want to be entertained. They like a story. So, who was the guy in the Bible that used to tell all the stories, the parables and things? What was his name?
I think they wrote four main books about him, but all 66 kind of point towards him.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah. I think we celebrated
It's
him.
on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Jesus guy, maybe.
That's it. It was Jesus.
Okay.
That's who it was. But people would come from everywhere to gather around him. And what was he doing? He was telling them stories. And those stories would parallel the message of the kingdom of God. And I've been to so many churches. I went to a church one time where every Sunday everybody would stand and say, everybody repeat after me. I was glad when they said, what is it? I'm glad when they said, well, let us go into the house of the Lord. And everybody said that with a straight face. And then they all sat down, and it's like that. And then there's got to be a long sermon, but it is a smart thing to do to make things fun and funny and entertaining. And then for me, I like to do that and then segue over into the message that you have for people. And they'll sit there all day if you'll entertain them. You can go too far with that. You can go I don't mean just like wacky comedy, but you got to get into people's brains. And I teach entertainers. And one thing I tell them is that your brain goes way faster than your mouth. When you've got people in the audience, if they kind of can tell where you're going with your story, they're already there and they're bored. So you've got to keep the mind engaged. You got to keep that dopamine going. They don't know where you're going with it next. They want to know what's happening. They love your story. And then it's like their heart opens up when you win their heart by entertaining them in some way. And then you can share the deepest, richest things possible about the kingdom of God because you've got their attention. I think that's missing a lot in churches and conferences and things.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the conferences that you put on?
Well, they're corporate conferences.
I mean, the ones that
Christian
you do. You've been doing some conferences that, I mean, you talked about you had Gary Chapman at one, that you've had some stuff. Not things that you perform at, but things that you do that maybe some of our listeners.
The conferences that I personally do.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the conferences that I've done are virtual conferences. The conferences that I go perform at, I'm there live and in person, which is the best way to be.
Yeah.
But I have done a couple of really extensive conferences. One is called Finding Peace, How to Live in Confidence, Crush Confusion, and Become Who God Created You to Be. I think that's what people are looking for. So we had 16 different people from all walks of life to talk about this topic. And one of them was Dr. Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 Love Languages. So obviously he talked about that topic as it relates to marriage. We had a lady who is a Christian counselor, and she would talk about this common denominator that people had when they were stressed, like, this is what you need. And she would give them this sort of biblical formula that would help them. We had a Christian nutritionist there to talk about, this is an aspect of the kingdom of God. It's not extracurricular. Nutrition is all in the Bible. And she had a plan and a program for people that if they were ready to stop being overweight and be healthy, that they could follow this plan. We had Dr. Dennis Swanberg. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Dennis Swanberg. And he came and talked about peace. And he talked about the same thing we were talking about, where all of a sudden all your work drops off and he didn't have any, and how God came in and ministered to him in that time. And he was absolutely hysterical. That is one of my favorite ones. There's a guy named Matt Tommy that is in Texas now, but Matt was a big mess. He said he was broke and busted, and he was taught by a guy named Jim Banks, who was also on the conference, who helps people through trauma. And I did an interview with him. Man, that was powerful. But Matt Tommy went through a lot of things, gave his life to the Lord, and Matt Tommy is a guy that just walks in the kingdom. I mean, when you look at him, I told him, I said, Matt, you are like a template for people that love the Lord. He just radiates. His business is thriving. God has given him a purpose. He said he's raising up an army of artists. That's what he does. He's an artist. And it was so refreshing to interview him and hear him talk about what he calls going from broke and busted to thriving in his work and in his ministry to other people. We had a guy that was a POW in the Vietnam War, and he was a POW for 5 years. And that story was so engaging that I forgot I was the host. He was telling the story, and I'm like, well, what happened then? Absolutely phenomenal. We had a guy that is in money management who runs financial services. We had a girl that is in skincare to talk about skincare. We had, one guy is a speaker, just a corporate speaker, a lady who God has given a passion to help marriages that seem like they're lost. And a lady who overcame this tremendous fear. She told a story of just demonic presence coming into a room and overcoming people with fear, and how God just annihilated that fear through his word. There are just so many people. And each one of those interviews lasted about 30 minutes. And there's 16 or 17 of them. I forget which, but so I put them all together into one like package. And then I did a little training at the end of it. One guy's a ventriloquist. Forgot about that. He's a full-time ventriloquist. So I interviewed him too. But it's called Finding Peace, How to Live in Confidence, Crush Confusion, and Become Who God Created You to Be. And you just sit and listen to these people and see what God has to say through them.
Is that still available anywhere for people to see?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Where could people find that?
They would go to mattfore.com/store, and you'll find it there. I actually have a lot of things. If people would like to know more, if they just email me, Matt at mattfore.com, MATT F like Frank, ORE like Echo, but Matt at mattfore.com.
In the show notes for you if you want to find out
you can
more
do
about
that.
Matt.
But if you just put Finding Peace in the subject line, you don't have to say anything else. Just email me, say Finding Peace, and I'll send you links to all this stuff.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's great. You travel around the world. You get to be in several different churches and many different cities and communities. What do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for the local church in the next decade?
Well, of course, and AI, of course, is coming up. I remember back.
Don't get us started on that.
Yeah, I remember back in the 80s, I thought that all computers were of the devil. I wasn't going to have anything to do with computers.
You might not be wrong.
I might not be, but it's kind of like fire. It could be good or it could be bad. And since I'm not techie, I come dragging my feet into technology. But honestly, now, and I'm really just getting this going. But one of the great instruments that we can use now is YouTube and Rumble and all kinds of social media things. And you see these people that it's like, I didn't know who that person was, and look how many followers they've got. I have a friend that I worked with years ago who talks about biblical archaeology. That's his thing. He talks about biblical archaeology. And he's got about 1 million followers on TikTok. So, wow, the way that we can level the playing field. Think about you think about people that worked so hard to get on NBC and ABC and have be a news anchor, right? And then they'll have 3 to 5 million people all over the country. And now YouTubers have got more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we learn that, and I'm really now wanting to learn more about that and how to grow this YouTube channel. I want to get into Rumble. I'm on TikTok. I don't really have a lot of followers, but I think this is a tremendous tool that Christians can use to really get the message out and get their message out. And, well, I'll say this quickly. But pastors, a lot of times, are way behind the curve. When the virus came out, you remember the virus? The one it was in 2020.
I heard that short-term memory loss is one of the side effects of the virus.
I don't know if I heard that or not. But anyway, pastors, when there's nobody in the church, would get up on the platform on Sunday morning with nobody in the church and would preach a sermon as if they were preaching to an entire congregation. And they shouldn't have done that. What they should have done is have got in front of a camera and just talked to people one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a thing called Pastor Encouragement, where I tried to train pastors in how do you reach out to people? Well, you do these little 1 to 2 minute videos that you're just talking to people about whatever you think God, needs to encourage them with, and people will stop and they'll watch that if it's a minute or two. Then you can also do long form things that could be 30 minutes. It could be a teaching, but you're growing your audience, because when you pull up a video, you look and you know how long it's going to be. If it's 30 minutes, you got to ask yourself, do I have 30 minutes right now? But if you will have these little short videos, and if they're fun and if they're entertaining, and you can have a powerful message in that, you can grow a following of people that you couldn't reach just in the church. I think that's a great tool.
One of the things that we've talked about some inside of engaging in social and video platforms that are out there is people tend to have this fear still, and it's a growing thing of being canceled and being pushed back. And so like there's pastors and church leaders and just random people, dads and moms that want to talk about raising a family or books they like to read and stuff like that. But when it starts to come in, and because Christianity and Jesus in particular can be a real struggle and tension for people, when it starts to have a faith element, people who create content start to get nervous around, what if I post something and my friends down the street no longer want to be my friends? What if I post something and I get one video that goes viral, and it goes viral for a reason that creates a ton of tension in my life? You really kind of make a living making fun of yourself, and it's, and so you've kind of gone a little bit of the, these major comedians, when they're out and you hear these men and women talking and they're like, sir, if you do that, I'm going to have to, and they're like, please do. I will make $10 million if you will kick me off this plane right now. I mean, you hear these comedian stuff and it's going like, you're about to buy me a second house and you don't even know it, just with the ridiculous of what you're doing. But what I would consider to be normal people, not comedians, like normal people who aren't looking to make fun of themselves and kind of make a living of just telling comedy and jokes about their life, get nervous about that. How would you speak into that of, hey, here's a way to maybe have some confidence in trusting, like, because you've just been sharing so much about your trust in what God the Father is doing, and you just trust that if I step in, knowing that he is good, he is the Father, and he wants us to be faithful in those things. You've shown this intentionality in that, and what you've shared today. What's some ways that you could maybe, encourage leaders who want to do this but are a little nervous about maybe being canceled or unsure about their content, or maybe just a lack of confidence in general?
Yeah. I would say the heck with them. That's what I would say. The heck with them. Do it anyway. Think about this. What are you going to say to Jesus when he's like, you had the opportunity to share that, and well, I would have, Lord, but I was kind of afraid that I'd be canceled. So you just have to do it.
And then he brings up the 11 disciples and is like, let me share with you how they all died.
Right.
Sharing my name.
Right.
Yeah.
Try to avoid that if you can.
Yeah.
But no, I think you have to have faith in God, that if they block you here, he'll make another way. I mean, do we believe God or not? He's going to make a way. I do a Facebook devotional almost every Sunday. It's about a 5 to 10 minute every Sunday morning.
Which spawned out of COVID.
Yes.
Because I remember the conversation we had.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this, and I've watched several, and it spawned out of COVID. And you started this step of, I'm doing these other things. You were doing the interviews with other magicians and those types of things, but you had started very specifically inside of the same channel, the same Facebook page. It wasn't separate things. I'm going to just share a devotional on this. I remember when you started that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that, but that's exactly right. But I would do
memory loss.
So it's okay, Jeff. But so I started doing this, and for several years I did that. And then one Sunday, I talked about this perverted stuff that was getting into the elementary schools.
Mm.
It was getting into the kindergarten and the first grade. And when I talked about that, it got the attention of the people at Facebook, because I would have 1,000 to 2,000 views every. Now, that's not my main platform.
Sure.
I mean, my main platform is email. That's it. But still, this is an avenue. But when I shared that, it got their attention. And the next week, they would not let me post. And I just had an encouraging message like you might hear in Sunday school. And they said it went against their
values, policies, and things like that. Yeah.
So I think the truth apparently against policy. I don't know if that's true, but that's the way it felt. And after that, the next Sunday, I did get to post, but I can't say for sure that they did this. I can just tell you what the numbers did. After I came on and stood up against the perversion that was getting into the schools, my viewership went from like 1,000 to 2,000 to like 100. I would have 5 or 6 likes. It's like they did something that kept people from being able to see me on their feed. So you would have to deliberately go find me. If you wanted to see that devotion, you'd have to think, oh, let's see what Matt Fore is doing instead of that. So that's a type of persecution, but it hasn't stopped me from posting every week. Sometimes they'll say, it's good to have both of you here today, to listen to the devotion. That it is okay. I mean, a lot more people have come back, but there are other avenues. God will make a way. I think if we say, well, I can't do this because of something that those people are going to do to me, then they won. They're going to cancel me on YouTube. I know a guy who runs a multi-million-dollar ministry, and his people come to him and say, now, remember, they canceled you the last time you said that. So do you really want us to publish it? And that's what he said. If we let them censor us, they win. So don't be censored. Just do what you got to do and let God make a way.
Remember that next time you say, I don't know that I want to say this on the airwaves. Don't let them censor you, Jeff.
Yeah, and it's I've recently released like a dozen domains because it used to, you could just go to a domain site and you could just get things, and it was like $4 a year. And I'm like, I've got 10, 15 domains that these ideas, and I'm like, Melissa's like, Robert, these things are $20 a year now, and a
lot of them are a lot more than that.
Yeah, and I was still in a .com world and things. I wasn't doing a lot of crazy stuff, but I did have a couple of unique ones, that some .tvs and stuff like that were starting to get like 50, and she was like, you got it. I love it. It's
either create something or let it go.
Yeah, it was very frozen. Like, let it go.
Yeah,
don't hold on to that anymore. And because it is. And so, but it is a challenge for me to, hey, be aware. Make sure you're doing the work. You're locking yourself in your room a little bit, and you're doing the work. You're getting your thoughts together. You're not just willy-nilly out there and hoping that, well, I've got this one thought. Hopefully the Lord will direct my thoughts. That may not go well, but put your thoughts on paper, take a few minutes, and it doesn't have to be an hour. It can be a 3-minute, hey, my, Jeff's thoughts for the day, and you can post that, and then it may build, it may get longer. You may decide 3 minutes is the niche that you really want to sit in, but your encouragement there to, man, why are you worried about that? I mean, why are you scared?
And the culture is changing to our favor a lot more than it was. And Rumble is very friendly to.
We've got a couple friends on Rumble.
Freedom of speech, and you can get on there and preach and do whatever you want to do on there.
Well, Matt, you are an entertainer, and so
thank you.
Our listeners would love to know what is entertaining you, and so we're going to bring back something that we haven't done in quite a while. We're going to hit Pastor's Picks.
And now, Pastor's Picks. What are we reading? What are we watching? What are we listening to? Does anyone really care? Probably not. But we will tell you anyways.
So we know that nobody really cares what you and I are,
especially in the last like 40, 50 days, unless House of David or sermons on YouTube.
Is, the Chosen.
Yeah. It's pretty limited.
Matt, what's entertaining you these days? Is there anything that really has gotten your attention? Any TV show, movie, book, podcast, radio show, anything that is really piqued your interest?
So you want me to tell you what I should say or tell you the truth?
Truth.
There are some sitcoms that I really like. I think Seinfeld's hysterical. The King of Queens and The Office and
This Is My People.
Yeah, Frasier. I think that
Robert does not like The Office.
I don't like The Office.
And
it's squeamish sometimes.
It's bothered Tony. We've almost had to cancel the show about 3 different times over it.
It's a fracture in our friendship.
Yeah.
My kids love it. Well, a couple of them do.
Which is the only reason I still hang out with you.
Yeah. Because I'm
hoping they'll rub off on you.
They meet his office need. So it's interesting because, and I'm a little bit in the same boat, by the way. I think there's a couple of what would be considered sitcoms that, I don't know, they function a little bit differently. I grew up watching Andy Griffith, which was probably about over by the time I was born. But I watched Andy. I grew up watching. You talked about Frasier. Cheers, which is your favorite show ever, Tony.
All-time favorite show.
And like I was even the other day, one of my kids was asking about like actors. Do they get big after a show, or were they big and then did the show? We were talking about Golden Girls, and with oh my goodness, that's what blank on her name, but she was in Maude, and then she played.
Beatrice Arthur.
B. Arthur, and thank you. And and then you talk about Betty White, who was famous though, but those were both famous. The other two kind of came into the show and became larger after that. But you look at comedy shows today. Are you seeing anything as a comedian that you're looking at and going, "Hey, here's something"? Office has been off the air
20 years almost.
Has it been that long? Really?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's hard to believe, as popular as it is. Like, is there anything current that you run across that maybe you haven't seen all of them, but you're going, okay, I've seen a couple episodes. I find that funny.
Yeah. Well, not really with sitcoms, but I love the Penn and Teller show.
Oh yeah,
Fool Us. I mean, I'm obsessed with that one. So I want to be on that show, and I've sent some video, but I haven't got in yet. And you have to time it just right. And I don't know how to time it. You got to time it right when they're doing auditions, but I can't figure out how to time it. So there's that. I also like some of the dry bar comedy.
Yeah,
some of the dry bar comedy is just wonderful. Some of it's not, but every now and then you'll find a comedian on dry bar comedy that's just hilarious, and you wonder, why are they not more famous than they are?
Well, let's make the shift to that. Who's 2 or 3 comedians right now that you just really maybe they've been around a while and they're still doing comedy? Who's 2 or 3 comedians you just really respect and you find funny right now as a comedian,
or that have highly influenced you?
Yeah, that'd be cool too.
I'm thinking this guy, I can't think of his name. Richard Jenney was absolutely hilarious, and he talked like twice at the speed that most people talk. And it was so cerebral, the things that he said. You'd have to kind of go look him up. But he was on the Tonight Show many, many times. So I thought he was hilarious. And then there's another guy that has, I don't remember his name, but you can find him because he was on Netflix. And he had a show. It's called Happy Face. It's called Happy Face. So I have my daughters over one night. We're going to go eat, and we decided we're going to just find something on TV to watch. And so I find Happy Face, and honestly, I don't want to try to describe it, talk about how funny it was, but I would just say, if you want clean comedy that will have you fall out of your chairs, look up Happy Face, because you're going to like it. It's hysterical. Yeah.
Robert,
Ryan Hamilton.
I don't know why we're even asking this, but anything for you, Pastor's Picks?
I mean, not in the last, I guess it's like 50 days now. I kind of, Easter ended. Our next episode,
we're going to do a Lent recap where we're going to talk about lessons learned from you and where you're at coming out of it. So don't give any of that away. That's coming next week.
We're like 5 days past when the fast would have ended, and I've watched about 60 minutes of non-faith based or sports with my boys type of TV, and it was a comedy. It was Tim Allen shifting gears. We'll talk about that more later, but comedians for me, I love Nate Bargatze. I think he's hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's right, Nate Bargatze.
So funny.
Absolutely.
He's still just a hoot. His Nate Land stuff, I hope some of the rumors I'm seeing on social media are true, that he is looking at reviving some things and doing some stuff. He's just hilarious, bringing a lot of people along with him. He has a very Adam Sandler vibe. Of pulling people around him.
Happy Gilmore 2 coming out in a couple of months.
It is coming out in a couple of months. And so I will probably wait for my kid to get home from the summer before we jump into that. But yeah, so that's I'm there's a lot of comedians. Liam Morgan's hilarious. Comedy's complicated too, because there's a lot of very like raunch comedy is just where the money's at right now, and it's very interesting to see people like you mentioned, the Dry Bar people or Nate or Leanne that are doing comedy that would be a touch more clean, that you can sit down with your family and really enjoy. Matt Fore, Josh Mancuso, funny people. When
I was on the cruise ships, you would be in a big variety show that lasts an hour.
Yeah.
So you get your 20 minutes. Don't go over 20 minutes. If you've got 20 minutes,
they'll
do 20
you.
minutes.
They'll hook you and pull you off.
Cut your head off and throw it overboard, So you got that. And then I would have my own show. They called it the Midnight Show, where it was in a smaller lounge, but the smaller lounge might hold 500 people.
That would have been a show of me being watched while I sleep. Just showing up with a blanket, laying on the stage, and be like, "I'll be here in an hour."
And you could say, "Good night, everybody."
Good night, John Boy.
Good night. But a lot of comedians were so filthy dirty when they do that midnight show, and I don't do. Of course, I don't. I've had people say, you can do some stuff that's R-rated if you want. I'm like, no, I can't. I couldn't make myself do that. But these guys are getting people that are rolling, laughing. But you can get up and do dirty stuff and get laughs anyway, just because you're dirty. But it's a lot harder to do a show that is clean as a whistle. I mean, not even one little, double meaning or one bad word, nothing. That's what I love. That's why I like Nate Bargatze so much.
I've always said that about Whose Line Is It Anyway? That I love the episodes or the segments when they fight to work the mind and the words that's coming out, because it's so easy. You can just tell like that it's just like, I don't have anything, so I'm just going to, I call it the gutter level of their comedy with the improv. And it's so easy to get people to laugh at middle school boys, fart and pooping kind of jokes type things, or like you move into that space. If you're just trying to make a middle school boy laugh, okay, but if you're trying to make people to laugh in a way that they're going, okay, that is funny, those guys are incredibly talented, and I could not do what they do. But I've always said that same thing, is it's a lot harder to work that angle and do that.
Imagine if they said, okay, we're going to do Whose Line Is It Anyway, but no dirty jokes, nothing dirty. It would be way more challenging for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's more challenging for them to do that.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate the ad lib stuff that they do, that improv.
Yeah.
It's a skill. I mean, I can do it, but I just need time.
I agree. Hey, are you listening to anything that's fun right now that people might want to hear about?
Went and saw The Amateur. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. That
Landon
I was
went and
excited
saw that
about
last night.
I thought it was really good.
He said
really liked it.
He said 8 out of 10.
Yep. I wanted to go and read the book. It prompted me to want to go read the book.
So you went to Chat GPT and said, read this book for me and tell me.
I actually didn't know that you could do that.
Yes, you can.
But I went to Amazon to find the book, and the book was written in like 1982. And so I'm interested to read the book because the whole movie was that he's a CIA intelligence officer who uses the internet and cameras and all this. And so I'm like, okay, the book,
There's
none of
no
that
way.
existed.
Yeah.
So what he was a cryptographer in the book is from reading the summary on Amazon. So I'm excited to dive into that. I just finished Cobra Kai, the series. It's done. It's over.
I have not finished that.
So season 1 and season 2 were perfection.
So good.
I thought one of the greatest things I've seen in a long time. After that, it really jumped the shark, and it got to where you just had to say, just be entertained by the fact that it's ridiculous. It's basically Saved by the Bell, in a karate studio. But so that wrapped, finished that. That was good. And I told you before the show, I'm listening to a new podcast called The Diary of a CEO that has blown my mind.
Can't wait to dive into that.
I'm really, really enjoying that.
That's mainly on YouTube.
Mainly, yeah, you can find it on any podcast, but it is a video podcast.
Yeah.
And since we talked a little bit about video podcasts, I think that was before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we need to make mention that you are here wearing a hoodie, a baseball cap, tennis shoes. I'm wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and Sperry's. And Matt's here in a suit.
A suit. In fairness, I've never seen him not in a suit.
That's
very
right.
dapper, Matt. Looking
Thank you.
really good.
Thank you very much.
I do think your profile picture is not a suit, but that's like, I don't think you're in a suit in your maybe you are. Maybe you're just in a.
Well, I didn't know what you guys were going to wear, but the rule in entertainment is you always dress one step up from whatever the audience is.
I'm just glad we didn't walk in here and Tony stumble out of his closet. And that's.
Yeah, especially in the condition that he described. You know why? Because I hate to see a sock hanging off of somebody's foot.
You never want to see a sock go to waste. Yeah.
Yeah, but like in a show, if they're in khakis, you're khakis and a jacket. If they're khakis and a jacket, you're a khakis jacket and a tie. You know, you're just one. You don't want to go in where they're in shorts and you're in a tux, right? You just want to know where they are and just go up one notch. That's the rule.
All right. Well, we need to wrap this thing
Yeah.
up. Matt, why don't you take a minute and give us your spiel? Tell all of our listeners what all you can do for them, for their church, for their organization, how they can get in contact with you. We've already given the website, but we really want our listeners who are all over the country that you're available, that you would love to come and share if you've enjoyed what you've heard from Matt today on this show. He has many different programs that he can come and do for your church, for special events. Just kind of tell them what you can do for them and how they can start that process.
Okay. Well, Dr. Gary Chapman wrote these words: "If you want to laugh, he's your man." That's quite a great honor to have him saying something like that.
Yeah. So
a lot of my reviews are just saying things like, "We never laughed that hard before," or "Our folks had a great time." That's why I'm there. At a lot of conferences, there's training. It can be kind of dull. It has to be, because they're learning something, but they want to laugh and they want to have a good time. And maybe it's an opening session, or maybe it is the end when they're sending everybody home and we want to leave them on a high note. So I try not to go over an hour, but 50, 55 minutes of just rip roaring hilarity. It's stand-up comedy magic. It's like stand-up comedy, but in the middle of that, impossible things are happening. I mean, if, for example, if this thing is here, if I borrowed a dollar bill from somebody in the audience and we noted it to make sure it's the same one, how could that possibly disappear and reappear inside of a lemon that somebody is holding in the audience? Some of it is like that. Some of it is visual magic, rope and ring magic, stuff with an egg, a lot of comedy. The audience thinks I've messed up and they feel so bad for me. And then they realize, oops, he got us. And then, 10 minutes later, They think I messed up again. It's like, oops, he got us again. It's just, a great show isn't just a series of tricks. It interlaces with itself. Something in the middle of the show makes sense because of something that happened at the beginning of the show, and then it comes back again at the end. A real show interlaces. It's full of one-liners and comedy and surprises, and it makes people just honestly forget everything else except for that one moment in time, that 50 or 55 minutes in time where they're all just together. It's like they're like a school of fish. When we start off, everybody's looking in 500 directions, but in about 1 minute, they're all just flowing like a fish. I could make 500 people look right there for 1 second, and that's all I need because it's too late,
Yeah.
So we just give them a great time, make them laugh and have a big time. My motto is not a dry seat in the house. And that's my goal. So at a lot of conferences, though, well, the corporate conferences, they generally just want me to entertain them. But I can segue over and talk about leadership. I can talk about hope. I can talk about effective communication. But usually at churches, they're mostly, the people there are Christians at Christian conferences. You don't know that for sure. But then I can segue over and talk about aspects of the kingdom. And I want to leave them encouraged, May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And the word hope in our language means you're crossing your fingers, but you don't know, but you wish. But in the original language, hope means a confident expectation.
Mm.
It's a confident, if God said something to you, it will happen. And I describe that like you ordered a pair of tennis shoes from Amazon. And as soon as you hit the buy button, those tennis shoes are yours. They're not there yet. In 2 days, they will be. But you don't hope that those tennis shoes are going to show up. You're confident they're going to show up. And that is the way that hope is in the Word of God. So I want to communicate with people that God wants us to live in faith, in encouragement, in biblical hope, expecting Him to come through. And He wants just the very best for us. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus wants us to bring heaven to us and not just wait till we go to Him. There's so many things I can share. But after the laughter, I want to leave them looking up and encouraged. And then in the back of the room, I've got my book, The Truth Shall Make You Laugh, and, Live the Happy, How to Worry Less and Laugh More.
Can people get that book on Amazon?
They can get Live the Happy. It's an ebook on Kindle. On Amazon. The other one, they have to go through me. And I actually sold out, but I'm going to get some more. So if you order it today, it might be a little bit because I've sold out of them. But
get your name on the waiting list now.
Yeah, but you can go to mattfore.com/store. And there you're going to see the books. You're going to see the Finding Peace Conference. You're going to see another one called the Breakout Session, which is like 13 interviews. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. But, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff on there. Yeah, but that's what I do.
There's a ton. I went to the store while we were talking, and so much good stuff on there. And the prices are incredible. I mean, it is really nothing's
It's kind of ridiculous.
It actually, you're probably giving it away almost. Yeah. I mean, it is really good prices for the content and the things that are there. I mean, I think those 20 sessions you did with Chapman and Swanberg and all of them was like $55.
Yeah. I mean, it's
and for our listeners, if you put in promotional code Pulpit and Porch, you'll get 0% off.
That's true. We'll charge you $7 more.
I think you should give twice that.
Hey, I would tell you that hopefully you said that you're trying to build your social media presence and you would love people to go and subscribe to your YouTube channel, to your Facebook and Instagram. I would say that hopefully our audience will really come through with that. But I did go and check our Facebook the other day, and we had exactly 3 subscribers, and one of those was me, and the other 2 were our spouses. You don't even subscribe to our own Facebook page.
I created it, and I forgot
to.
So
we promote that every single week, and our listeners have not come through for us on that. So hopefully our listeners will come through on that. Subscribe to the Pulpit and Porch, and while you're at it, subscribe to Matt Fore on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. You gave something else that I'd never even heard of before. So Rumble, never even heard of that.
Yeah, Rumble's great. Yeah, and on the YouTube channel, we've got some funny short films, and and just comedy. I love to post just comedy. That's not all Christian content.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about a lot
stuff.
of that stuff, but I mean, there's just so many good resources he's got, ways to make you laugh, but also things that I think can challenge your creativity, your thinking, and how you can implement some of those things into your own life and ministry as you're going through. It's really good stuff.
Now, Matt, you did say when we talked before the show that you did have a special gift for every member of our audience, that you had an article that you had written that you wanted to send to them. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and how they can receive that?
Okay. It's called Ignore the Cynics. Hope is Your Greatest Asset. It sounds like it's a strictly Christian article. It's not. It's a Christian biblical principle, but it was actually published in, I think, entrepreneur.com.
Wow.
And just to kind of give you a little synopsis of it, I know a guy who hated math, terrible in math. In high school, he said he had 3 years of Algebra 1. And he got into the stock market. And all of a sudden, he's doing these complicated math computations in his brain. He's talking about ratios and I forgot. I mean, anyway. And I said, what happened to the guy that can't do math? He didn't think about, he was changing, I think I'll do math. He got into something that he was excited about. He was excited about the stock market. He was investing money. He called me one day. He said, you know how much I made today? I said, how much? He said, $80,000 in one day. So he took $25,000 and in 3 years turned it into $500,000 because he was excited about it. He had hope. He could see it. He was going after it, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. But there was a college, and I can't tell you how they did it, but they were able to measure what they called psychological aspects of people's personalities in the way that they accomplish things. And what they found was that the people that had hope surpassed even people who were ahead of them academically or athletically. Just because these people were excited about it, they were able to accomplish things that they wouldn't have accomplished otherwise. So that article is about that. Ignore the cynics. Hope is your greatest asset. So if they will just email me, and you could put hope in the subject line, or you could put finding peace. I'll send it to you either way. I'll send you that article. I think
great.
Really
we'll have that in the show notes for all of you listeners that want to go and get that from Matt. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for this edition of the Pulpit and Porch. We want to thank you for tuning in, and we especially want to thank our guest, Matt Fore, for joining us here in studio today. Want to encourage you all again to go and reach out to Matt, use him at your events, buy his books, subscribe to his video channels, and you can find all of that at mattfore.com. That's mattfore.com. We especially want to thank Higher Ministries for supporting and sponsoring the Pulpit and Porch podcast. Without their sponsorship, this show would not be possible. So why don't you go on over and visit higherministries.com, like them on Facebook while you're liking Matt Fore, and while you're also subscribing and liking the Pulpit and Porch. Be sure you do that, and be sure you tune in next week, because we have another great discussion coming up for you on ministry, life, culture, sports. We didn't touch any on sports today. That might be the first time ever. And just a really good time on the porch. So have a great rest of your week. Thanks again to Matt, and we will see you all next week on the porch.